speaking, the regional district would generate approximately. Are you getting feedback?
Yeah, so
that may be the normal when we reboot things in the boardroom. So just continue to talk and we'll be fine.
Okay. Anyways, yes. So in terms of the demand analysis, the regional district will generate between 14 and 21,000 tons of garbage a year that will require disposal, and that just helps figure out what kind of how large of a system will be required for the future. Once we had that understanding, we went to part two is to look at the feasibility of the waste management options, and the four options that we looked at is siting and building a new landfill, option one, or exporting waste outside the regional district, in which you would require a new transfer station. Looking at waste to energy, whether that is feasible for the regional district, and option four is expanding the existing landfill. So those are examined as part of that. And then based on that, we will look into the detailed options analysis. So in terms of, just to recap on the board resolution, the direction was for staff to continue conducting a detailed analysis of siting a new landfill as well as waste export. And this would be done in parallel with finding out cost estimates and understanding the potential sites. So the two options is to look at the transfer station, look at the potential capital and operating costs, and also looking at siting a new landfill, potential locations, what are the costs, and the feasibility of locating new landfills at those sites. So first, I'm going to start with the transfer station analysis and give some perspective from there. We're looking at location, facility layouts, design elements, and facility considerations. So the site that was chosen for the transfer station analysis is properties that are located on the Hillside Industrial Park. That is about 40 kilometers away from the existing Seashell landfill. So what we have here is a very just conceptual design of the layout of the site. The red outlines the property boundary, and the yellow outlines the path that vehicles would take to go into the facility. And from there, we have the transfer station where waste would be disposed, as well as bins on the outside where folks can drop off various recyclable materials or divertible materials. And of course, we have buildings and so forth. In terms of the design elements, we would look at 60-foot scales for vehicles to come in and out. We'd have a scale house as well as a shelter for the attendant. We'd have drop-off locations for commercial buildings like collection vehicles, the large collection vehicles, as well as a drop-off area for the smaller vehicles. We would take advantage of the grade separation in terms of vehicles being able to back in next to the roll-off bins, and then the residents or the customers could basically drop their materials into the bin. And this is the two types of wall configurations that are potentially available depending on the grade separation. Here are some photos of what the facilities can look like. This is what we call a Z wall pattern, where folks can back into the little parking stall, and from there they can move the materials directly into the roll-off bins. There would be a guardrail there for safety. This is another image of a facility that's located. And ultimately, we will be having these roll-off bins that will be situated next to the Z wall, so that materials can be moved in and out of the drop-off area. The transfer station building where materials would be unloaded would look like this. Basically, the vehicles would drive into the bay doors, and from there they will drop off into the tipping floor, and from there the materials will be pushed into these pits that go into the trucks. And this final picture here kind of shows you where the long haul trucks would be coming in and out of the facility. And up here in the blue is where I guess the commercial vehicles would unload their materials. The transfer station would also have other features such as bunkers where bulky goods and green waste would be located and stored before they're sent to other places. That's basically for areas where they're not required to be protected from the elements. And for some of the materials that would require some protection from the elements, we would install some coverall buildings where materials such as gypsum and mattresses can be stored in a dry, safe place. All in all, for the transfer station, the regional district should take into consideration that it will take, on average, about 2 years to procure the design and construction of a transfer station. Our estimates are that the facility would cost about $4.7 million. And when we factor in the cost to operate, the cost for capital cost, and so forth, it will be between $175 and $290 per ton. That cost is very much dependent on the disposal, where that material is taken to. So that will depend on the distance traveled from the transfer station to wherever the endpoint is. It will also depend on the tipping fee at the gate. And if the materials are dropped off in landfills that are located in the United States, we'll also need to take into consideration exchange rates. Any questions about the transfer stations?
Not seeing any. There's a hand. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Yes, this is probably something that was covered previously. You said the estimate was 14 to 21,000 tons of garbage per year. What were the assumptions, like the population assumptions? Were those included in that? How was that number calculated?
Yes, that number was calculated based on population growth projections. We took basically the average of the last 3 years to get an estimate on the average amount of waste disposed on a per capita basis. And then from there, we looked at population growth projections and estimated how much that would happen. It does not take into consideration additional waste diversion programs that might come into play, but those are, assuming things kind of stay at the relative rate of disposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Tice.
Thank you for that. And I'm not sure if Mr. Yang has the answer or staff, but I'm wondering why the existing, landfill and transfer station has not been considered as an option. I thought that was what was the plan, that we are going to make that a transfer station once the landfill closes, and why we're putting a new one up.
Thank you.
I believe this is the location that we looked at for the transfer station, and I mean certainly it can be located there as well. But I think there is a plan to site a facility closer to where the material would be unloaded and taken off the regional district.
Okay, I see GM Rosenboom was waving.
Thank you. In response to the question from Dr. Thijs, the currently under construction transfer drop-off site in Seasheld is contemplated to be a long-term facility. The site at Hillside is the primary function of that is to combine all the waste from Pender and from Seasheld and combine it so that it can be barged off coast. So in that way, that's the transfer that's happening there. While so the minimum facility that could be constructed there would be just a site for only commercial trucks to come in, materials be sorted, put in larger containers, and barged off coast. However, while that site is developed, staff considered it to be a benefit to also have that site be accessible to public, because there is currently no site on the south coast for such purpose. So that's why there is all those bins are also included, but that is for further confirmation if that's indeed desirable. Otherwise, residents from Gibsons would have to drive to Seasheld to dispose of their materials, and then all the materials would be trucked back to through Gibsons through Portman to the Hillside Park transfer station. So that's why we felt it would be appropriate to also open that site up as a residential transfer station for customers on the southern part of the coast.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I am just a little bit mixed up about when you say the long haul trucks and versus barging. So is the part of the attraction of Hillside is the marine facilities there. So I'm just kind of not sure, is the idea to put waste into trucks and then onto a barge and then go somewhere, or how does it get from the transfer station to wherever it's going to go, the final destination?
That's exactly how they would do it. They would load it onto to trailers, long haul trailers, usually either one or a tandem trailer. And then from there, they would drive them up onto the barges. And then once it would be barged off and brought to, I guess, the mainland on Vancouver area, then from there, it would be hauled either directly to the disposal site or hauled to a rail spur where it would be loaded up into rail cars and transported down. So there could be a number of different options, but ultimately it will go into trucks, and from there it will go onto the barge.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yes, thank you. And interesting presentation. I am concerned with the idea of private passenger vehicles going out to the site. I mean, it's not a particularly friendly road with the heavy traffic that's already on there with heavy trucks and logging trucks and things during the daytime. As well, I note there's provision there for green waste. Does that mean that they anticipate shutting down the green waste in Gibsons, and the haul would then be to Hillside for residents in Gibsons for green waste? Right now, I think most of our stuff seems to go to Sailor Soils. Is there a reason why we would be putting green waste at the at Hillside?
I'm going to suggest that GM Rosenboom take that one.
Thank you for the question. If green waste is included or not, that's it's currently suggested by the consultant. It's not a decision that's been made, and I think that's also not a decision that's currently required to be made. I think and because there will be a second part to this presentation, ultimately it is the decision that's required at this point in time is or no, not even a decision. The process that we're in is deciding if a transfer station is indeed the way to go, or that it will be a landfill on the coast. And I think further discussion in the years to come can be on the details on what will be included in terms of service level at each of the locations.
Just a follow-up as well. Is there any requirement or need to upgrade the road to Hillside with the additional heavy traffic?
That's one of the things that would need to be further assessed is a traffic study for both options, because a landfill would also require, would also trigger certain traffic flow to be changed. So I think traffic needs and impacts to the road network would need to be assessed in both options.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind everybody that we have a second half of this presentation to go. Director Theis.
Yeah, just a quick question around whether we even have an option of not putting this transfer station in if apparently any option subsequent to our landfill is going to be past the lifespan of our landfill. So is there an option of not putting up this transfer station and then yet still being able to get rid of our garbage once our landfill closes?
Who would like to take that one?
I'll take that one. The intent is that if an interim solution is needed of waste export, we'll make a workaround. We'll make that work without the need for this transfer station to be constructed. There might be some additional requirements, and at the current facility in Seashell will be a little bit longer. So then most likely the trucks will go from Seashell to the barging facility, and that's to be explored. But it's not the intent that this transfer station would be constructed for the interim measure.
Thank you very much. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually pertaining to the current slide. So looking at the capital cost of $4.7 million estimated, I recognize there's a lot of variables into that number. But when we talk about residential access, what sort of, is it possible to say what portion of that $4.7 million is to facilitate residential access to the site? Can we build just the commercial transfer station for 2.5, for example? Just wondering if we know the breakdown or what that increase might look like, because if it saves us $2 million to not allow residential access into that site, I'm happy to make people in Gibson's drive to the Seashell transfer station. Sorry, Bill.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain that?
Sure.
Sure. I mean, this is, if the decision is to do a long-term transfer station, you certainly want to build it to the highest standard so that folks, all customer types can use the facility. You can certainly build it so that it's only available for commercial traffic, and something that is very, much less bells and whistles. So certainly you can build it for a lot less. There's a lot of different options out there, but in terms of what a facility would look like, similar to what they have in Cowichan Valley Regional District or Nanaimo Regional District, this is kind of the standard in terms of a long-term facility. But if it's a temporary facility, you can certainly build it to a much smaller scale.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Yes, I was just wondering, is there compaction prior to loading onto the truck, or how does that work?
There can be compaction, can certainly be put in there. The machine is, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but certainly it's something that can be done. Generally speaking, they are trying to get about, for a single haul trailer unit, we're trying to get about 22 to 25 tons of material in there. And then for a double haul, it's probably about 36 tons for the two trailers. So it depends. It really comes down to if they're able to use a loader to basically load it and compact the material, then they don't need to do a compactor. But if the waste is very light, then a compactor would certainly help.
Thank you. We are at the end of the questions, so if you could continue.
All right. So the next part is to look at the landfill feasibility, and we're going to talk about the regulatory side of things, the site visit that we did, understanding some of the considerations of the properties, looking at the footprint, as well as the economics and overall summary. So the first thing we did was we talked to the Ministry of Environment and got their feedback in terms of the regional district pursuing a new landfill. And generally speaking, they said they're not opposed to siting or building new landfills. I mean, that's just a part of what they do. They do the approvals. They did indicate that we should use the landfill criteria to make sure that the site can meet these requirements, as well as if there are some aspects that aren't met, then we can look at engineering solutions to help address some of those requirements. In terms of the process, they did recommend that to consider amending the current solid waste management plan so that the disposal aspects can be looked at and addressed first. And then once that happens, then to use that opportunity to amend the landfill or amend the solid waste management plan. So just looking at the 4 locations that we looked at, we have Seashell here, and basically to the west of Seashell, we have the 4 potential sites that we looked at. So for the site visits, we use a drone to go over the sites to basically look at the topography, as well as examining to see whether landfill criteria requirements are met, try to identify whether there's environmentally sensitive areas, as well as industrial development that may have occurred. With that information, we also were able to at least be able to figure out how easy it is to construct and operate a landfill at those facilities. And with that survey, we're able to also estimate how much landfill capacity would potentially be available. So one thing we did was after visiting the sites is we recognized that one of the sites, location 1, which is in yellow there, had a lot of karst topography in the area. So from that perspective, we felt that location 1 probably wasn't a suitable location for a landfill. So we automatically avoided that area for doing the aerial surveys. But we did do aerial surveys on locations 2, 3, and 4. So this is the view of location 2, and from there we were able to scan the site, and that we were able to prepare a conceptual design of the landfill site on that property. Similarly, we did that also with location 3. This is the property that's closest to the highway. And based on the topography, we were able to do a conceptual design of the landfill on that parcel of land. And for area location, potential location number 4, we did the same thing, did the aerial survey, and from there we're able to prepare a conceptual design of the landfill. So just to summarize the 3 locations, location 2, 3, and 4. This table summarizes how much area we were able to survey. Also, from there, we were able to figure out what the footprint of the landfill would be on those parcels, and how much airspace we can potentially get out of those properties. So from that aspect, we estimate that with location 2, you'd probably have about 200 years of capacity. Location 3, about 60 years capacity, and location 4, 80 years of capacity. So certainly good locations that have a lot of additional use for the regional district. In looking at the BC landfill criteria, these 3 sites mostly met the requirements of the landfill criteria. Areas that need to be looked at a little bit more detail and confirm some results are proximity to heritage and archaeological sites, proximity to some of the other environmental sensitive areas, look at the depth of the groundwater table to see where that is, and to examine whether there are any faults or sensitive areas that might be in that property, around the properties. In terms of cost considerations or the economics of things, the capital costs were taken into consideration relative to the amount of waste and as well as the life of the landfill. So in terms of the 3 locations, it ranges from about $10 to $11 per ton to up to about $18 to $24 per ton. That's for the capital cost. When we factor in the operating cost, it will be about $140 to $195 per ton. So in total, we can expect somewhere between $150 a ton for disposal, up to about $220 a ton. So it gives you some perspective in terms of what the relative cost could be if a landfill was able to be sited there. So overall summary, we have the breakdown of the 4 options, the transfer station, as well as the 3 potential landfill sites. From a capital cost perspective, it ranges. Transfer station certainly is the lesser for capital cost perspective, and then the landfills are either 50% to 3 times more expensive. From a capital cost perspective, when we factor in the operating costs, the costs become much closer to each other, and so for the transfer station, it will range between $170 to $280 per ton, whereas for the landfills, it will range from approximately $150 a ton to $200 a ton. So, and in terms of other features that are important, some of the facilities are very close to the main highway. So the transfer station as well as location 3 are only about half a kilometer away from the highway, which is short for additional road construction for access. Whereas location 2 and 4 are more than 5 kilometers away from the main highway. So generally speaking, there are some things to consider, whether it is building a full-scale transfer station, as well as for transfer station, taking into consideration fluctuations in costs for disposal and transportation is certainly an important consideration, as well as acquisition for a property. Whereas the other landfill locations, I think it's going to be important to conduct public and First Nation consultation to see whether there is support for these facilities, as well as taking into consideration the distance to get there from these locations. That's about it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. If you can stop sharing, then we can see everybody in the meeting. So I see that hands are going up. I actually have a question right off the top, and that is, in the cost estimates, did the transfer station cost include the cost of land purchase or not?
It did not.
Okay, so it's actually higher than what's shown.
Correct.
Director Ties.
Yeah, thank you for that. And my question is for especially around option 2 that has an expected life expectancy of about 200 years. Is there an option to do a sort of a phased approach where not all the capital costs has to be realized at the beginning of its lifespan, and it sort of gets done in phases? I guess the other options would be the same question, but not to a lesser extent.
Yes, in terms of landfill construction, it will be built in phases. So that's already taken into consideration. So you don't build a full landfill. You will kind of design it in terms of the full footprint, but each cell would be designed as you need to use the cells. So you would build one cell where you'll be using it for 5 to 10 years, for instance. And then once you're almost close to filling that cell, then you would build the next cell.
So follow up, are the cost estimates provided to us for just the first cell and the infrastructure, or is that for the full build out?
It's for the full build out and divided by the total amount of materials landfill.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Did the cost include a paved road as the access road? Was that included in the cost?
No.
Director Seegers.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So location 1 was taken out of consideration because of the karst topography. Fair Lake, which is location 2, also has karst topography or karst terrain around it. Was that considered as well, or have we looked at that as part of it? Because that may also take that site out of consideration.
That is something that we'll need to look at in the next part of the analysis.
Okay, go to Director Hiltz, and then I'll come back for more questions.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
Thanks. I would like to follow up on Director Seegers afterwards as well, but the first part is the regulatory overview. You talked about the amendment to the SW, the Solid Waste Management Plan, before an update. So what would be in this amendment? What needs to happen? And staff might have a perspective of the timing of these elements.
Right. Over to GM Rosenboom.
Actually, I think Manager Cooper is best able to answer this question.
Thanks. So based on the presentation, Wilbert referenced that the ministry recommended to amend our current solid waste management plan to allow for waste export. That's what that was getting at. And we've already received board direction to do so. So that, in terms of our solid waste management plan, that is our next step. Once we've received that approval and we have amended our current solid waste management plan, then we can go through what's called the update process, which essentially results in a completely new solid waste management plan, but the ministry uses the word update. So amendment to our current, and then we would do an update process. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Director Hiltz, you want to follow up?
Just on the timing of where we are on that application to amend, where does it take weeks or days or months or how long?
In terms of timing, we're hoping to initiate this project this fall. And in terms of the timing, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, depending on what type of engagement strategy we use. And then depending on how much time, which we don't know, that the ministry would take once they receive the request for amendment, as well as basically providing the backup that we have completed the engagement and that we have support from First Nations and the community for such an amendment.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So another location. So first of all, locations 2 and 3 are within the community forest, the community forest tenure. And I reached out to the community forest to find out if they've been consulted on this, and they haven't. So I'd request that as part of moving forward, the community forest be part of this, because in some of these sites, they've actually put in a lot of money because they've reseeded, all those kinds of things. So there may be some costs there as well. Then with regards to location 3, that is one of the roads that has been used for logging traffic. And you indicated that road construction is not included as a cost. What they indicated about that was that the logging traffic actually has to do U-turns at Trout Lake and then access the road otherwise. So the highway junction will need to be redone, and it'll be a significant cost. Okay, that's it for now.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
The report referenced, and you can see it on the lines on the presentation, the report references the proximity to the airport and the flight paths. I hadn't heard this as a concern with regards to the existing landfill. Has that come up? Because we are obviously much closer to an airport than any of these sites that are being referenced.
Manager Cooper.
Thank you. The ministry updated the landfill criteria in 2016. In terms of if there are existing landfills that are within certain ranges, they're essentially grandfathered in. So no concern at this time with the Seashell landfill in terms of its proximity to the airport.
Have there been issues with regards to birds and planes because of the landfill?
Thanks for the question. Staff are not aware of any concerns being brought forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, so what I'm gathering out of this conversation is that the cost estimates that we have here are not really all that relevant to what we might actually have to pay once it comes to getting to the stage where we can accept garbage at the new location. So I'm wondering if in the next iteration or the next report we can have estimates like road building and basically getting us to the stage where we can accept garbage and how much that's going to cost us, rather than sort of the full build out but without roads and such things. Because I think we would probably need that information.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to follow up on the sites, as Director Seegers noted. Site 2 has potential karst, and number 1 was eliminated. So the general question is how well known is the risk of karst in this general area? Geologically, is it known provincially? How well known is the geological risk of the karst topography in this area? How well known is that? And what evidence did you seek to determine that risk?
In terms of the study, it was just from our site visits that we acknowledged that from what was displayed on the signs. So I think as part of the next step of the more detailed analysis, where we're out there looking at the geology, certainly that will be covered.
Follow up.
So site 1 is already eliminated, so you would not be following up on site 1. Site 1 is eliminated at this point. So that's why is it eliminated prematurely?
Right now, that one had the most evidence of karst topography. So from that perspective, we eliminated that. But we can certainly verify later on if that's required.
Thank you. I have a question myself that I wanted to put in here about when you're talking about the landfill footprint. I know the footprint of our current landfill, but its scatter area, I might say, is considerably larger thanks to the eagles and ravens and so forth that pick up bags full of garbage and then fly off with them and drape all the trees in the vicinity. So if we had a landfill within, say, 500 meters of a popular lake, would it become strewn with garbage?
There are certainly a lot of I guess processes that can be put in terms of litter fencing. Some other places they actually would compact the garbage separately before putting it in. So there are certainly measures that can be taken to really help with controlling litter.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. It seems that the sites that have been chosen, using the drone to fly over the areas, are sites that have been logged. So that's, admirable, but does that necessarily indicate that those are the best sites within those areas, given that we haven't necessarily looked at other pieces within those blocks? Okay, so question whether or not these are the actual best sites for these. And then the other point that we had brought up previously was, whatever site we choose, we want to ensure that we have sufficient land for long-term expansion. So I've got here 200 years in the one place, 60 and 80 and the ones that are identified here. Is there land available at any of these locations for expansion even beyond that?
I think we need to look at that as part of the analysis and seeing whether there's. I mean, I think the purpose of the exercise is just to look at doing a scan or aerial survey of these properties to see whether it's even possible to locate a landfill in these areas. And from that perspective, certainly there's opportunity there. And then as part of the more detailed analysis, to go and look in there is probably the next step. With the log areas, it was much easier for us to see the land in terms of the ground surface. For the areas which haven't been logged yet, it's difficult to estimate what's going on underneath the trees.
So follow up to that. So what you're saying is at this point, we're saying, yes, it is possible to have a site in these locations. We're not necessarily saying this is the site, but it's a potential site and more work has to be done on the polygon or whatever to determine where inside of that it's possible.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director August, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you guys too. It's been a while. Just a question around First Nations consultation and engagement. Is there a strategy kind of developed yet with regards to that? And is there any way that I can assist from the Shuswap Nation's perspective? I don't know who that question would go to.
GM Rosenboom?
Thank you, Director August. I will take it. I've been in contact with some senior staff of the nation on this file for the last several months, and they received draft reports and for review and we had some meetings with them, and they provided some input, some preliminary input in terms of any concerns they might have. That conversation is ongoing, and I think that we agree that in any future phase, there will be even more direct conversation between us and the nation, especially around the feasibility of a landfill within the SWAYA. The transfer station that's, as it's currently located, it will be out of the SWAYA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
The sites we're looking at here seem to be consideration seems to be area and size. Are we also looking at technology options that would actually reduce the need for a large area, greater kind of initial compaction, maybe even curtain burn or things of that? Are there things that could be done that would say we don't need a 200-year site because we're actually going to manage the volume a lot better on the site, so that that 200-year site based upon just putting our garbage on top of the ground could actually be a much longer lifespan with technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important to recognize is when you build the landfill, you might site the entire footprint, but you're only building it in cells anyway. So each cell would last 5 to 10 years. And if the regional district could reduce the amount of material that would require landfilling, then you'd only use a small amount. And certainly you don't need to use the whole site. You can just use the site that you need. Ultimately, it's about having resiliency for your system.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So we're kind of looking at two options here, or two strategies, because we need something in the short term because our landfill is going to fill before we actually have a location. So we're looking at approximately 4.7 million for the transfer station to deal with that solution and then build the landfill. Have we looked at using the site at or a site close to the Hillside site as a landfill so that some of the costs that we put in to build the transfer station aren't necessarily throwaway costs, but could be used for a landfill? Is that a possibility?
GM Rosenboom.
I'm going to take the first part of your question, and then I hand it over to Mr. Yang for the second part. The first part is the question about, do we need to build a transfer station or not, regardless of the option? And the answer is no. Transfer station is only required if the long-term solution is decision is to export our waste from the coast. If we decide for the interim measure, transfer station of this nature is not required. So it is or a transfer station or a landfill, and not both. And
Okay, so are you saying that we actually have time now to build a landfill prior to running out of room at our, so what do we do in the meantime?
for the interim exporting of waste, a transfer station of this size and scale is not required. We can make more temporary, we can find a temporary solution. That would not require a transfer station of this magnitude.
Thank you, that clarifies that.
And that's in part because the transfer station will be designed to handle future volumes of waste. And of course, it's designed to handle the waste volumes of the next several decades. So that's why for only to handle the current amount of waste, an interim solution can be found that doesn't require a transfer station of this magnitude.
And do we have the cost for that?
That's part of the project. Manager Cooper was just indicating that we're starting to work on right now with the, and as part of that, the current under construction transfer drop-off site at Seashell Landfill would be an ideal location as a temporary transfer station, and would allow for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
And then there was the second question. The second question was, did we look at landfill sites in the Hillside area? And I think that's a question our consultant could answer.
Yeah, so we did look at siting a landfill there, and it's very steep, and it would be very costly to build a landfill there. Not saying it's impossible, but it's very, very challenging and very costly.
Thank you. And Director Hiltz, because he wants a landfill in Area F.
Perhaps. I just want to ask, it sounds from Director Beamish, he says, we put the garbage on top of the land. So landfill, I always think is the best thing is you got a big hole in the ground, you fill it up. But mostly is you work with the existing topography. There wouldn't be like extensive excavation in these areas. It's kind of to smooth it out, put a liner, and then you put everything on top. Is I always think of it as land mountains, not land fills, right? So there is no real change to the surface of the land in preparation for building a landfill. You're not looking for holes in the ground, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, you would basically build a foundation from where you would have to dig a little bit, but certainly then build on top of that.
Thank you, Director Pratt.
Thanks. Well, as the director with all of the sites in her area, it's, I don't know, Director Hiltz, are we going to play tradesies? I just wanted to, I have to apologize because I just got the report this morning, so I wasn't able to delve really super deep into a lot of it, but I just want to review the timeline of what we're looking at, because we've got an engagement amount of time that has to happen, and then we've got to worry about all of our environmental approvals from the province as well, and then there's the building piece and everything else. So I'm just wondering, GM Rosenboom, do we have a timeline? Like best case scenario, let's say we move ahead with the with one of these options as soon as possible, or go on to the next step of feasibility. What are we looking at in timeline before, if everything goes right and we have a landfill sited on the coast because all of the stars and everything align? What are we looking at for our length of time, realistically?
Thank you for the question. And with your permission, I parked that until when I do my verbal update about next steps. Then we can have a discussion about timeline and next steps and how that all works.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So the concept is you do a little bit of digging and then you build on top of that. What about where we actually have big holes right now? And I'm thinking of the Lehigh gravel pit. Have we actually had conversations with the Seashell Nation and Lehigh? Because there are big holes there. And I know in other communities, what they've done is where they have things like that, they fill them and then they put things like soccer, fields and things on top of them. So have we talked to them? Is that part of the conversation, or have those lands totally been out of consideration?
Who's going to take that one? GM Rosenboom?
I can take that on. Thank you for the question. Staff had, at a very high level, raised the issue with staff from the nation. And it's our understanding that the long-term intent, the long-term use of the area that's currently gravel mine is residential. And from that perspective, at the staff level, there was no real appetite to further explore expanding the landfill, as that would almost eliminate the potential for that area to be residential developed in its entirety. Because if our current landfill would be expanded into the mine site, that then you almost trigger all kind of landfill criteria conflicts that would eliminate a lot of further residential development in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are at the end of our questions. So I'm going to thank Mr. Yang for your presentation. Very interesting. You're going to have our riveted attention will be on this for quite some time to come.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And yeah, we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.
Next item on the agenda is future waste disposal options next step. Jim Rosenboom.
Thank you. What I will do is I will share my screen again. Let's see if it works this time around. Oh, now you see the different version. My apology, you're seeing the non-presentation version. Hold on, need to go back to Zoom. Share screen again. Let's do it another time. Okay, this should work. So, as just discussed, and I think that was clear also in the questions from the director and from the presentation from the consultant, siting a landfill at any of the 3 sites in the Half-Moon Bay area could have significant impacts on the potential cultural use of the area, environmental issues, archaeological values. There's a lot of recreational use in the area, a lot of mountain bikers, hikers, people that are going there to visit Fair Lake. All the sites are significant. There are significant costs associated with their development, anywhere between 20 and 40 million in terms of capital investments. And as indicated, there might be higher given, for example, road construction or highway crossing, highway connection upgrades required. It's also very uncertain if, given all the impacts and costs, we might be able, if we can get the support from the community and the Seashell Nation for the development of any of these sites. And the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy clearly indicated that support from relevant First Nations as well as the community is essential for them when they're considering a new waste disposal option. So besides all the technical and financial challenges associated with the sites, the support from the community and First Nation will be critical. So, given that we see that there are several significant challenges to be overcome related to the Half Moon Bay sites. So, what we're proposing is to initiate a second opinion on landfill siting options to confirm if there are no more favorable sites on the coast, and we're proposing to do that to have that completed by a leading expert in BC on landfill siting, and to do that prior to any further analysis of any of the current sites. The question is this the best that we have on the coast, or is there something more favorable that can be found somewhere else? And one of the questions from Director Seegers was, hey, 2 of these sites are within community forest. They are just being reseeded, replanted. I heard also the question, did you consider sites that maybe not logged yet? Those are options that I think should be worth exploring before a more firm decision or direction is provided between is a landfill even an option. In terms of a transfer station development, given that second opinion that we're recommending to do that second opinion, we propose to do some further internal work on the transfer station, primarily on the fact that the land cost portion, because the land Hillside is already SRD owned, only not by the solid waste function, but by a different function. So we need to figure out, including getting legal advice on what are the tools for us and what would be the value for the solid waste function to internally purchase that land from the Hillside development function. So there is some internal work that we can do there to advance that, but we're currently not proposing to seek consultant assistance with that until more firm direction is provided on the landfill options. So in terms of timing, we're proposing to do that second opinion in the upcoming months, and continue to work with the Sechelt Nation regarding the current 3 sites, as well as any outcomes of that second opinion, and present the staff report later this year. Based on that staff report, the board can then decide, okay, what are the sites? Are there 1 or 2 landfill sites that they would like to have explored further? And if that's the case, then we can start engaging with the community on the options that are on the table. And of course, ongoing consultation with the nation. At the same time, early next year, the solid waste management plan process will be initiated. We're planning to do that and get the RFP prepared later this year. But the actual work we only think will start early next year. The first phase of any solid waste management plan, and that's required by the province, is a financial analysis of the entire cost of delivering of the entire service. And as part of that analysis, based on any direction provided by the board, the option of transfer station versus 1 or 2 landfill sites can be included in that analysis. And that's allows also for further public and First Nation engagement in that analysis. So that's to be done, but we expect that financial analysis to be also complete, because it's first phase, to be completed sometime next year. And so what we hope is that we would have the information for the board on the technical side, as well as on more financial analysis side, and have the results of our engagements with public and First Nations by late Q2, early Q3 next year, for the board to make a final decision on what are the options they would like us to consider in the solid waste management plan. And actually, that is actually the final decision on what the board would like us to explore further in terms of detailed design, costing, and proceed with the development of one of the options. And we discussed with the board, with the MOE, how it would work, because actually the solid waste management plan, the board will need, the MOE will need to confirm as part of the solid waste management plan any of our long-term waste disposal options. So a formal okay from them, for example, for us to develop a new transfer station or landfill, might not come until the solid waste management plan update process is completed in 2023. However, if there are technical reasons or financial reasons that there is only one option to be considered, we can consult with MOE to see if they have any objections with us. Actually, if there's a risk for us to actually make a formal decision to advance with the development of a future option prior to the development, completion of the development of the solid waste management plan update. So there's a little bit of chicken and egg there happening between. Formally, the solid waste management plan would need to be approved prior to us actually starting the development of a new option. However, I think there are options for us to have a discussion with the province prior to that, so that we're not making any decisions that we might regret afterwards. In terms of development timelines, the questions from Director Brett, as indicated by the consultant, it would take about 2 to 3 years to develop a transfer station. So if decision is made late next year to develop a transfer station, we might have it operational late 2025, early 2026. So that would only require maybe half year of an interim measure to be in place. Landfill might require way more time, anywhere between 5 to 7 years. So if a decision is made late next year, we're talking about maybe late 20s, 2028, 2029, before we have a new landfill fully developed, including all the associated infrastructure. That's it. And I can see that there might be some questions about this. So I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can have a discussion.
Thank you very much. And indeed, there are questions. Director Seegers.
First one, I have a list, but I'll cycle through. Do I understand correctly in that we have to wait till we have the solid waste management plan revised to be able to say, yes, we want a transfer station or not? Because personally, and I have no idea where the board is, personally, I think it's our job to keep track or deal with our own garbage rather than transfer it to someplace else. So for me, that's kind of a value statement that I would like to make. And so personally, I would, at this point, I would say, no, transfer stations off the table. We do know that we have sites here. We need to deal with our own garbage. So I don't even want to go that route. And I don't know where the board is, but is that something that we can actually make a decision on now and give direction to staff? Or is that something we have to wait for these other steps to be in place first?
Thank you for the question. Based on our conversations with the ministry, if the board makes a statement like that and that's supported or by the consultation with the community and First Nations, then there is no real chance that the ministry will not approve a solid waste management plan based on that statement, based on that decision. But for them, it's really about what is the intent of the board, how much, to what extent does the intent of the board, the community, and First Nations align, and if the three align in a certain direction, then I think there's a little risk for that for the SRD to take if they actually proceed with development of one of the options. If there is a disalignment between the three, then it might be a more riskful conversation.
So that points to actually a direction forward. It's a communication in my world. It's a communication with the community to say, which direction would you like us to take, to see what kind of support we have there, because the community might be aligned with that or not. They might say, yes, it's ours, we deal with it, or no, we're really okay with that, which would give the board some direction in moving forward. Because if the community as well is saying, no, we don't support a transfer station, that's additional cost that we don't have to put out at this point in pursuing that option.
Thank you. I'm going to just interject to point out that if we were to do a consultation and the community said we want a landfill, and then we find for various technical reasons that it's too difficult or expensive, or First Nations won't support it, and we turn around and build a transfer station, then we're going to be in the position of having the community say, well, why did you ask us? Because you're not taking our advice. Just pointing that out.
So
Director Beam.
I'll address that. I mean, we've already had the consultant now say there are sites on the Sunshine Coast that are suitable for a landfill. And part of the consultation that would necessarily have to happen would be with the First Nations as part of this initial consultation. If they as well say, we deal with our own garbage, then we know we'll have support. Maybe, and then that's the site piece that we have to sort out.
Thank you.
Thank you. If
GM Rosenboom?
Yeah, maybe I agree with the discussion so far in terms of what is the risk and what would be the benefit of consultation at this point in time. That's why we propose to have to continue with our consultation with the nation to find out where they stand on that question from a principal perspective as well as from a site perspective. In terms of communication with the community, we're already getting notice that it will be difficult to have a conversation with the community about the principal decision of a landfill versus transfer station. And given there are some sites proposed, so all the discussion, all the feedback that we're receiving at this point are about site-specific issues. So it will be difficult to have a conversation with the community at that higher level, which I concur that ultimately is required, because that is the principal decision to make. So therefore, that second opinion that we're suggesting to complete, and that can be funded out of the existing budget, will give us the confirmation that these three sites are indeed the best that we have on the coast. If that's the case, okay, let's have a discussion with the community on these three sites. Versus waste export. If not, let's have a discussion with the community about a broader suite of sites, or abandon one or two of these sites and add another site to the conversation. I think it will be a challenge to have a conversation with the community without having that specifics in hand. That where are we looking at?
Good. Thank you very much, Director Beamish.
Yeah, I think the challenge also points out the real need that we still have to do a regional growth strategy, because that's all part of that conversation. As we continue to grow as communities, we're going to continue to increase our garbage requirements for dealing with the garbage and refuse. The other part that I'd like to say is that if we're looking at the transfer station, I haven't seen any reference yet to the Squamish Nation and talking with them, and the whole How Sound Forum issue and the biosphere of the transfer station and associated. We're going to have birds. We're going to have the same associated issues with the transfer station that we're going to have with the garbage dump, different degree perhaps. But I think those conversations have to be held with the Squamish Nation especially, but also the How Sound Forum, and people be involved in that type of activity and entering into the How Sound area.
Thank you. Perfect. Completely agree. That's why in my slide on next steps, I included First Nations as consultation with the Squamish Nation is indeed vital for the transfer station component.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I just want to concur with, I think, the approach that staff is taking, especially, which is what we learned a while ago is that it's a little bit counterintuitive, but that actually exporting waste might actually be a lower GHG emission option. Ironically, because the larger landfills, say down in the States, do a better job of recapturing methane and such things. But yeah, I think there's that transfer station does need to be part of that discussion and needs to stay on the table, even though I do think we should take care of our own garbage if we can.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'm going to make one statement and then I have another question. As we all know, there's an election next year, which is great timing for in the middle of a conversation about landfills. So it's just another wrinkle that the community will have to deal with, staff will have to deal with. It will also impact decision making in that should there be turnover, I mean, we don't know who's running or who's going to get in. Should there be turnover, that will be more work for staff to bring a new board up to speed to move forward. So that's just additional time that will probably have to be included in there. Question. So one of the comments, I wrote down one of the lines that you had in your presentation there. You said, financial analysis for service delivery costs for all existing and proposed solid waste services combined. So that is part of what needs to happen. Would that be similar to like a complete service review of that, or would that be beyond that? Because that's right now we have Town of Gibson's, District of Sechelt, Regional District. We have multiple governments providing varying levels of service to different people on the coast due to initiation of programs, etc. Is that part of this conversation, or could that be a little bit added on to that to see, are we doing things the way we should be doing them here on the coast?
Thanks for the question. At a previous Infrastructure Services Committee, the committee and the board provided direction to staff to include solid waste services from across the regional district, across all jurisdictions. So that phase one or part one of the solid waste management plan update process will be incorporating all of that. So all of the costs of all of the services of all of the jurisdictions as it currently is. So that's the basis of that first part of the solid waste management plan, as well as we're going to be evaluating our future waste disposal options.
So is that a service review, or are there additional pieces that would need to be done to have it be a service review? I mean, what I'm looking at is, are we providing the service in the most economical way to all of our residents, or should District of Sechelt get out of the business of recycling and composting and garbage, and should it be joined with the regional district? What does that look like? Is that the way it should be? Is that part of the conversation, or does something have to be added to have that complete service review?
Thank you for clarifying. So that first phase of a solid waste management plan update is, what are we currently doing? What services are being provided, and what does it cost? We're in a unique position that we also have to determine what our future waste disposal option is, which is the cornerstone of the solid waste management plan. Then the next part of the solid waste management plan is looking at, well, what are we going to do differently? We would be setting waste diversion or waste reduction targets, and what can we do differently? And nothing, I don't want to say nothing, but everything is on the table in terms of how we could approach our services, who delivers them. But that is all part of that conversation with the community and the First Nations, and basically becomes our solid waste management plan, is what are we going to do for the next 10, 15, 20 years?
So that sounds like that could be a service review of the whole service. As long as we have that lens going into it, so that we ensure that that information is gathered in a way that it could inform future decisions by the different governments.
Yeah, to not use the word service review, because each jurisdiction may conduct a review or determine what services that they provide. But again, how we approach our services or how we would like to approach our services in the future would be part of the solid waste management plan. And, you know, one of the actions could be to explore combining the services or being provided by, you know, the regional government, and then upon adoption, you know, then staff would work through whatever that looks like to achieve that action or that target or that goal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I think first of all, I'd like to make a statement. I agree with what's been said, that I believe we should deal with our own garbage locally, but of course that's a decision to be made in the future. And I think one of the problems is opposition from site-specific locations. And so is there a better site? I think that's one of the first steps as well. The one thing though that I think I did hear that is specific, that needs to be done right away, or my question is, does it need to be done right away, is temporary transfer stations. I think we've decided that they are required no matter what we do. So we need a temporary transfer station of some sort. Whether it's just loading trucks and from the existing site and the way it goes away for an interim, or whether we do something. So I guess my first question is, have we settled that we do need a temporary transfer station? That would be my first question.
GM Rosenboom.
Thank you for the question. As indicated earlier in this meeting, it will depend a little bit on the options, on the timing of the development of transfer station or a new landfill. But the drop-off site that's currently being constructed at Seasheld could function as an interim transfer station for exporting waste if desired. There might be some minor modifications required, but in the design and the site, we included that could be required that site will be used as an interim transfer station. So to answer your question, no, currently we don't foresee the need to build temporary transfer stations to facilitate interim waste export until a new long-term solution is found.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment in that I'm also opposed to waste export. You know, it's our garbage. It's not fair of us to just ship it away and make it disappear. A 200-year lifespan of a landfill sounds like a fantastic idea to me, but we don't know what landfill and waste disposal technology is going to look like in 20 years. So, you know, maybe an 80-year landfill is more than sufficient. I don't know that, but one thing that might be worth considering is that if this project drags out and if the stars don't align for us on this project, which we know—
I'm having audio problems. Is that just me?
I heard a glitch, but I'm fine right now.
Okay, I lost Alton there for a while.
Oh,
sorry.
Oh well. Anyways, if the stars don't align for us on this project and it does get dragged out, you know, it might be prudent to put local landfill versus waste export as a referendum question that is timed with the 2022 general election. You know, we've talked in the past about, you know, are there things that we can ask our community and combine them to save some funds at the same time, and that if it comes up to that, I think that would be a great opportunity, because we would hear from the vast majority of our community during the general election. So just my thoughts. Thanks.
And I'll just point out that we should probably take any results of that by area, because I could foresee that perhaps everybody in area B would be opposed and perhaps everybody in all the other areas would be for it. So talking of area B, Director Pratt.
Thanks. I was, that's similar to the comments I think I was just going to raise, Chair McMahon. It's, you know, we've got a long way to go before we have a landfill that's built, or even before that decision is fully made, and we do not have the time to waste. There we go. We don't have the time to waste. It's I mean, we've got to move forward with where we are at. I will make, my statement will be, I believe we should deal with our own waste. I don't know if the community and I feels that way, and I already heard very clearly from my community that they have grave concerns about having it sited in our area, and all of these sites proposed are within my electoral area. So there's a lot of concerns going forward. So it may be something that we do need to look at as a question going forward. The timeline seems to align a little bit with that. I have concerns about, you know, if we make a decision going forward and when fall 2022 comes around, what happens if newly elected choose to flip whatever decision we've made. So, but I mean, that's part of the risk that we take as we move forward and do things as elected. We need to do what we feel is best and what our community wants, and represent our community as we go forward. We've been working on waste diversion for a long time, and we still need to do a lot more and get a lot more buy-in from our community on that. And so I don't have any questions. I have a lot of concerns. We'll move forward as we can, and support staff, and make sure that there's a lot of communication out about what the options are. I mean, and that's, I think, what we're looking at, that comment of, look, it's either we're shipping out or we're dealing with it here ourselves, and bringing it back to those brass tacks. And we have responsibilities as individuals, as human beings, to look after our own products of waste. So it is a value statement. I would agree with Director Seegers there. But we can state that as a board, that's our value statement. The community may feel different. So I think we'll hear more as we hear from the consultation, and move forward that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Question for staff. Given what you've laid out for us, are there any recommendations you need us to make today, or to go to the second consultant? You have the authority to be able to do that inside of what's presented. Thank you.
Yep. There's no decision required. We can proceed as proposed without receiving any board direction.
Okay, thank you very much. We are at 11 o'clock or 11:01. I think this is good time to take a little break, and let's resume at 11:10. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of Thursday, July 8th, 2021. Next item up on our agenda, our amended agenda, is power system replacement for Seashell Landfill update. Manager of Solid Waste Services, please.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The Seashell landfill has always been off-grid simply as a consequence of its location. Electricity was first required at the Seashell landfill with the installation of the Wayscale and Scale software in the early 1990s. At that time, a 12-volt car battery powered a small laptop, the Scale, a portable receipt printer, and one overhead light. It was recharged by a combination of a few small solar panels and a pull-start portable generator on cloudy days. Since then, there have been at least 3 major overhauls to the system in response to increasing power needs at the site. In the early 2000s, the system was expanded to be more like the system we have today with an array of panels, batteries, and inverter. Then in 2006, and again in 2017, 2018, there was a complete replacement of the system. In early 2021, the entire power system, including the backup propane generator, failed due to a variety of reasons, including increased power demand of the site. Since then, the site has been utilizing a diesel generator on loan from SCRD Utilities. The SCRD retained XCG Consulting Limited, the SCRD's contracted solid waste engineers, to conduct a power assessment and system replacement study for the Seashell landfill. The results are included as an attachment to the staff report in the agenda for the meeting. From the XCG study, there are 4 options for consideration. However, based on the board's ambition to be carbon neutral, only options 1, direct connection to BC Hydro, and 2A, a new PV system at 99%, would meet that. However, based solely on costs, option 2B, the new PV system at 80%, is the most cost effective. Staff have provided the committee with an updated option summary table. The updates include details regarding contingency amounts, updated costings for option 1 to include 10% contingency, and updates to the asset replacement costs. So based on capital costs, annual maintenance, asset management, and GHG considerations, staff recommend that the Seashell landfill pursue a direct connection to the BC Hydro grid. And staff are seeking board direction regarding which option to implement. Thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification, which I noticed the table was amended, that's in the report. So if we went with the BC Hydro connection option, the line connecting us to the landfill would belong to BC Hydro and be their responsibility to maintain? Good. Thank you very much, Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate having the options laid out in this table. It makes it really easy to look at and to compare them. You know, it's been nice that we've been able to operate the landfill on a solar battery generator combo for as long as we have. But given when the system was replaced in 2018, what was its expected lifespan at that time? Because I'd hate to say, oh, we can install a solar system that'll be good for 7 or 8 years, but then we find out it fails in 3 or 4, and we should have gone hydro in the first place, or at this time. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So based on the table that you have there, the anticipated timelines is anywhere between that 10 to 15 years. And unfortunately, that was not realized with those replacements in 2018, with everything failing essentially 3 years later.
Maybe I can clarify a little bit what happened earlier this year. It wasn't that all components were failing at once, but one component was failing, which was triggering the failing of the second one, which was failing so there was a trigger effect. So the numerous components were failing because of failing of one. There was overloading of other components as a result.
I believe Director McMahon froze. No.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Now I'm doing it. All right, Director Ties.
Thank you. So if we were to grid tie, I assume that the solar panels that are part of the original installation are still functional. I'm wondering if they could be put into a grid tie system, and then that way we sort of use all our existing assets in a way that will reduce costs in the long run. So I don't think that option has been discussed, so I'm wondering if that is an option.
Staff.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. If the PV array that's currently in place to connect it to make a hybrid solution, it would still require an inverter to be purchased and installed, and most likely some additional capital costs as well to make some connections. So yes, it is an option. It would further increase the capital cost requirement.
Thank you. And the question that I had was, are there any other customers in our neighborhood who might also be interested in kicking in for a power line? But, you know, I don't see a crowd up there, but I thought I'd just check.
Thank you for the question. I consulted with utility services in terms of power to the water intake on Chapman Creek. That will be a option. They're currently using solar, but there is no need for that, and there will still be a long way away. So in terms of capital investments, that might not be the most economically favorable.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
I would suggest reaching out to the District of Sechelt, because we have the Dusty Road septage receiving site there. And we also we're in the process of starting the build for the Public Works facility. We've also advised staff to look at putting in a sandy dump kind of thing for RVs on Dusty Road. So we have a number of projects in that area. I don't know what we have available to us with BC Hydro at this point, or if we need work done. So I would suggest you reach out to our engineering department. They'll be able to price.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody on the speakers list, and I'm hoping, Director Hiltz.
Yeah, just one question about the asset replacement and the funding option. We briefly discussed this at review. It's equipment is for owned assets, and so I just wanted to reclarify the equipment loans are for owned assets, and if these assets are not owned by the regional district but will be owned by BC Hydro, is this still the suitable funding? There is a change in the table there about the asset ownership.
That's a good one for staff. Okay, anybody got an answer to that one?
I missed the question. I was responding internally to another question. So maybe you can repeat the question. My apologies.
Just verifying that short-term equipment is still the viable option for financing when the assets are not owned by the regional district. Is that still okay to do it that way?
Yes, we confirmed with finance that that's the case, as the assets will contribute to us. It's the same with Church Road, where poles will be installed along the MOTI right away as part of the long-term loan.
Good, thank you. Director Seegers.
All of the recommendations as presented on page 1A
Seconder? I see a seconder. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's everybody in favor. Thank you very much. So, next item on our amended agenda is, oh, my favorite, the water supply update.
I see a hands up from our recorder, Tracy Olson. Tracy?
Oh, sorry. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify that the recommendations on page 1A are different than the ones for the addendum to attachment A. So I just want to clarify if the board's wanting the recommendations to be amended to be 195,000 instead of 194.
Right. Okay, since the table was updated. Is that...
Okay, so you're looking at the 1A in the amended agenda, but it says 194 and it should be 195.
That's how I'm reading it. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, is that what you're looking for? 195?
Thanks for the opportunity. The 195 that's listed in option 1 is the capital costs. However, the recommendations that are listed on the staff report would need to be raised to 212,000 to include the 10% contingency that was added to the capital cost under option 1. That 194,000 is the entire project that's listed in the report, is the entire project cost, which included the completion of the study. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm confused. You said 200 and what? Where would that need to be?
Thank you. So in the recommendation that says, and that the Seashell Landfill Power Supply System replacement budget be increased from 115,000 to 212,000 funded through MFA 5-year equipment finance loan. That would take into account the 10% contingency that was added to option 1, as well as the expected costs for the completion of the study.
So what is the appropriate procedure at this point? Do we put another motion on the floor?
Well, I think we have to recall.
Yeah.
We have
Can
to
we
recall the
rescind? Yeah, rescind the motion?
Okay. Do we have a motion to rescind?
Yes.
Moved, seconded. Thank you very much. All in favor? Okay, we rescind that motion. Can we start again?
So so I need to know which agenda I should look at to actually have the correct motion in front of me. I'm looking at the amended agenda, but the amended agenda is not the recommendation that Manager Cooper indicated.
Manager Cooper.
Thank you. That's correct. The amended agenda did not take into account the expenditures for the study. So it would need to be amended to from 115,000 to 212,000 to take into account the contingency.
Okay, so you're saying the recommendations on page 1A, the third line down would say that the replacement budget be increased from 115,000 to 212,000 funded through MFA. And then what about the loan then? Would be a loan up to 212,000 or still at 194, 212,000?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'll make that recommendation with those changes. So wherever it says 194,000, we insert 212,000 instead.
And I'll second.
Thank you very much. If there is no further discussion, I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That passes. And thank you very much, Tracy, for catching that. Much appreciated. And now it's over to our water update.
Thank you, Chair. I will share my screen. So today I will provide you with an update on our water supply situation. To date, reflect a little bit on the heat wave we just had, as well as include an outlook on what's to come this summer, what we expect to come this summer. So the heat wave, as we all know, it was unprecedented warm here on the coast, and we saw that also with the water supply. It was as high as we haven't seen since 2014, which created some challenges at our Chapman treatment plant because it was operating at or sometimes even above maximum capacity to keep up with the demand. We were lucky enough that the heat wave occurred early in the year, early in the summer, while there was still sufficient flow in the creek for us to pull from. If that would have been the case, there would have been a need to go to stage 2 or even stage 3 as an emergency measure. But the current situation was already quite challenging for staff. They worked around the clock to meet community demand, and the system was challenged as well. We had some infrastructure that was barely keeping up and sometimes failing a little bit and needed some DLC. But we managed and we learned from it, and which was good. So this is what the result was in terms of water use. The yellow-orange line is actual temperature, average daily temperature. So you can see that the daily temperatures really spiked on the 28th. However, the consumption itself, the blue bars, spiked on the 28th and actually more the 29th. And you can see that the creek flow dropped significantly from about 5,000 cubic meters a second in mid-June to where we are right now. We're about 300-400 liters a second. So that's the drop. That's really the result of the lack of rain since mid-June. In terms of the overall use compared to last year, this year June was way more dry than last year. So the light gray line is 2020, and the blue dots, the blue squares is 2021. And you can see that 2021. The average use in June for the entire rural areas is close to 1,000 liters a day, which is higher than even the peak last year. And these data do not include the heat wave data. This was prior to these readings were done just 1 or 2 days prior to the peak in use as a result of the heat wave. So it's really related to the dryness in June itself. If you separate it out into areas, then you can really see that Earls Cove and Egmont get their usage low. Elphinstone and West Town Sound, they were just under 1,000 liters a day, while all the other areas were more around 1,100 cubic meters a day. So with stage 2 now being in effect in the Roberts Creek and Elphinstone West Howe Sound area, we hope that in July and August that the consumption will go down in those areas. What is a prediction? The graph on the left, that's what I showed a month ago at the previous committee meeting. And it indicated that there would be a slight chance that we would have a warmer than normal summer. The graph on the right was from June 30, the updated graph from Environment Canada. And you can clearly see that the dark red area is now also within our region, which indicates that there is a very high likelihood that the rest of the summer between now and September will be warmer than normal, which is a good indication of what we can also expect in terms of precipitation. we expect it to be below normal. So where are we at currently in terms of drought response? Old Cove, Pender Harbor, and Egmont are still at stage 1. Eastbourne is at stage 3 since June 28, and of course, Chapman, Langdale, Grantham, and Soames are stage 2. The timing of them going to stage 2 is comparable to 2018, when they went to stage 2 also on July 5th. And last year was a little bit later, and 2019, because of the dry spring, it was actually way earlier. So what can we expect for the rest of the summer? It takes a couple of days before our consumption actually significantly drops as a result of the implementation of stage 2. So we hope to see that in the data in the upcoming days, but it's looking good at the moment. But there is it's warm weather and no rain in the forecast. I just checked, at least for the upcoming 2 weeks. And so it will be interesting to see what it will do with the consumption. Without significant rainfall, stage 4 is to be expected to be required for our Eastbourne water system somewhere in the upcoming 2 weeks. The wells are going down rapidly at the moment. And it's when they reach the bottom of when the water levels reach the bottom of the wells, then that's when stage 4 is called. And then the water provision to the customers there will be matched with what's actually the data inflow to the system. So everything will be rationed at that time. Stage 3 for the Chapman water system, but the current weather conditions is expected late July. I want to also stress that the more water is saved by the community at this point in time is reduced. It will extend the period that we can stay in stage 2, so maybe even extend it into early August, and might ultimately reduce the need for us to go to stage 4 if this warm and dry weather persists throughout the summer. These are to underscore that a little bit. This is the consumption graph, the demand graph for the Chapman water system in 2018. July 6 was the date, stage 2 was called then, and you can see that throughout July and early August, the consumption stayed at about 20,000 liters a day. If you compare that to 2019, and stage 4 had to be called towards the end of August. If you compare that with 2019, there was early stage 2, early stage 3, and the consumption stayed lower throughout the summer. And as a result of that, no stage 4 were needed to be called. The next one, what I will do is I will include where we are right now. It's a red graph and it will look like this. The spike, the peak is of course the heat wave, but we are currently significantly above both 2018 and 2019. So if the demand is not going down in the weeks to come, we could look at a scenario as we had in 2018, where towards the end of August, stage 4 would be required to meet the community demand, moving forward until through September at least. So what are we doing? What is the community doing at the moment? Early June, we sent out 400 leak notification letters, and as of yesterday, 38% of them were resolved, as far as we know, which is a great response from the community. And we're continuing to work with the other residents and businesses to resolve their issues. And there is again an increase in the number of residents that signed up for their water use update program emails, so that they get their monthly water use data per email. We currently are at about 240 subscriptions. Where are we at in terms of outreach and enforcement? warnings, we issued significantly more to date than we did so far last year. And so far we issued one fine, given that the residents was also received warning in earlier years and was still watering when not allowed. In terms of the permits, lawn watering permits, we issued this year 48. So there are residents that are still allowed to water their lawns, their new lawns, in the early days of stage 2. But most of those permits will expire soon. We have, with the new staff that we hired, we have an increased capacity to do outreach and enforcement compared to the last several years. So we're out more on the road. We have, we are striving to get back to residents more quickly when they file a complaint or when a warning needs to be issued. We started our patrols early June and we'll continue throughout the summer. And staff will follow up on all complaints it receives. It can take a day, but we'll get back to you, or we'll follow up directly with the person or with the residents or company the complaint is about. Education is always the first step, but warnings are issued as indicated frequently, and if needed, fines are also within the toolbox. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the update. And I guess I'm looking at going to stage 3, and I need a reminder on what happens to the groundwater systems of Langdale and Granthams and Soames, in terms of the watering restrictions. We haven't been at stage 3 for a couple of years, so just a refresher what happens with those ones.
Thank you. Stage 3 is usually not called for those systems at the same time as it is for a Chapman system, because those wells are able to at least several years to sustain a stage 2 watering restrictions regime. So usually it's only the Chapman system itself that goes to stage 3 and not the Langdale, Soames, and Granthams and systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my personal experience of receiving one of those letters. I was one of those 400 that got a letter that I have a leak, and I did some sleuthing by turning off the water mains on both the houses on my property, and unfortunately the leak persisted. So I've been back and forth with staff who's been very responsive, and it's been a good experience with them. Right now we're in the monitoring stage because the leak is still relatively small, but if it gets any bigger, I might be digging up 1,000 feet worth of water main, which would be just absolutely fantastic. That's just me sharing my experience. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Lee.
I have one comment for Andreas or Director Ties. We had a situation where the line into the house was leaking, and the homeowner actually dug it up in the middle and put a turnoff to see whether it's at the first half or the second half. And it actually turned out to be the second half, so we had to dig the second half. But it was a good troubleshooting method. My question though for staff is there any, the water restrictions for Egmont, Earls Cove, North Pender, South Pender, is there any forecast on whether they will have to change?
Thank you for the question. As I presented in the start of the presentation, when I showed the water demand in those systems, it's low. It was, I think, below 600 liters a second. As long as it stays relatively low, we don't see a reason to for them to move up to stage 3 anytime soon.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just had a quick question. If you could refresh my memory on when Eastbourne is going to get an additional supply.
Thank you for the question. We're currently working on that project. It was budget approved earlier this year. The earliest that can be completed will be 2022. It could be 2020, early 2023, but we're hoping to get something in place there sometime next year, but it might not be in place for, most likely it's not in place for next year's summer.
Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Please refresh my memory as to the differences between stage 2 and stage 3. Who does that impact? What does it impact? Because given the maps that you're showing about the climate that we're going to be dealing with, the temperatures we're going to be dealing with, it might be something that we want to implement sooner rather than later, depending on the impact.
Thank you for the question. The graph on what is allowed in which phase was included, but I'll go back to it. It's primarily the watering of lawns is already not allowed during stage 2. So any further restrictions will be primarily around the watering of the times and the methods that are allowed to use for watering ornamental vegetables, but also just the commercial use of water, and filling of pools will be prohibited at state, and the watering of sports fields will be, so it will primarily have an impact on parks, pools, and people that are watering their ornamentals, and the watering of vegetables will still be allowed.
Thank you very much. Director Pratt.
Thank you. I guess in raising that question, Director Seegers, it also makes me think about how much we focus our water conservation methods on the outdoor use, and I'm just wondering if it's maybe, I know we do have some, or we've pushed some information out in the past about indoor water conservation efforts as well. Are we at a point yet that we need to start looking at that as a more, we have to start using more of a stick around, for want of a better term, just to encourage people to conserve a little bit more in the indoor section, or indoor use, because we know that there's a lot of use outdoors, but we know there's a lot of indoor use that's happening now too. So I guess it's kind of a comment out there to the directors, but also to staff on what kind of communication we have going out about conservation overall of what you can do to save the water in your home.
Thank you for the question. Indoor water use is part of our communication plan. It's about how do you turn off the tap when you're brushing your teeth, washing your hands, and that kind of stuff. And I will connect with our communication team to ensure that those tips will continue to be part of the communication message throughout the summer, because I agree with you. It's not only outdoor, it's indoor as well, where large difference can be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, following up on the communications aspect of the future, the next couple of months doesn't look great, right? It's looking challenging. It's challenging on Salt Spring Island. It's challenging in a lot of places. And you said kind of this, you save a liter now, you get to use it in August, right? So we're in a saving mode now. And I'm wondering about the proactivity of this campaign, because people have forgotten what it's like to go to stage 4, I think. Back, it was it's a challenging time to get there. So I'm wondering that how are we going status quo communications? Or are we kind of bumping it up?
Good question.
Thank you. Part of the reason why this is included in this presentation is because we want to raise the attention that stage 4 is not out of the window this year. And any opportunity the community can apply right now to avoid that from happening or delay the timing of happening would be beneficial for everybody involved. So, and yes, a further communication, increased communication about this will follow next week.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further hands up, so I think we can go to the next item on our agenda, number 6. Sorry, is it still number 6? I've got 2 agendas. Yes, it is still number 6. The pipe supply and contracted equipment for Chester Road and Henry Road. So, over to Mr. Rutley.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Funded from the operating budget for the regional water system, the SRD replaces water mains that are undersized, considered at risk of failure, or are at the end of their design lifespan. Presented for your consideration is a recommendation for award of 2 contracts related to the construction of water mains on Henry Road and Chester Road. First contract recommendation is to Andrew Sherritt Limited in the amount of $285,318 for the supply of ductile iron pipe and fittings. The second contract recommendation is to GRP Construction Limited in the amount of $255,343 for the supply of excavation and hauling equipment. Staff anticipate that the work on Chester Road can start by August 16th, with the work on Henry Road to follow beginning in September. Staff are happy to discuss any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. My question was going to be which one is first, and now I know. So Chester Road first. Good thing too, because it blew up a couple of times lately.
We're aware of that, and also the timing around the opening of school as well. So staff are trying to be conscious of that impact.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's see, Director Seegers.
Thank you. Given that Ministry of Transport is actually responsible for roads in the regional district, how does their involvement tie into us doing construction in the roads?
Thank you for your question. Staff provides the design package to the Ministry of Transportation. In this specific case, we met with them on site to ensure that the ministry was okay with the proposed alignment for the new water infrastructure, and they ultimately review and provide permit approval for it. But costs for the resurfacing are the responsibility of the regional district.
Thank you.
Thank you. I actually have a follow-up to that because I believe the Henry Road water main will impact our green waste site, will it not?
Thanks for the question. Yes, the construction will be on the section of Henry Road across the road from the green waste facility. Work will be largely in the shoulder on that section of Henry. So there should be minimal impact to the green waste facility, but staff will be reaching out to both the town of Gibson's and the school division, given their works facilities on that section of Henry Road as well, to give them a advance notice of the construction. But due to the location of the water main, there should be minimal impacts to traffic flow.
The only thing I can add to that is the increased upsizing of the water main will actually ensure that there is fire protection to the Greenway site and the public works site, because there will be a hydrant where there is currently no.
Wonderful. Hydrants are good. I know that much. Director Hills.
Thanks. Yeah, great to see the work going. The question I have is about the paving. Henry Road north of Reed is chip seal, right? It's not asphalt solid surface. So what standard would, I'm wondering how much repaving will actually happen on that surface. I'm gun shy from the last time Henry Road got paved. It was a darn expensive paving job. So I'm wondering if it's going to be the same standard, or is it, single lane only in the shoulder, or is, what's the extent of the paving on the Henry Road section and the standard that it's going to be done to?
Thank you for the question. The work on Henry Road, as I've mentioned, is largely going to be in the shoulder. We're not anticipating any significant paving on Henry Road until we get to the private driveway at the north end of Henry Road. There's the kind of publicly maintained roadway ends, and then there's a private driveway. So we're not anticipating any significant paving on the publicly maintained portion of Henry Road. If there were a need for it, the expectation from the ministry would likely be paving to center line. And I believe the standard that we used for resurfacing at Markway and Henry Road Markway and Chrisway in South Pender, I believe the paving was completed early 2021 or late 2020. That was a chip seal road that we constructed in, and the resurfacing was 50 millimeter lift of asphalt. So certainly less rigorous than the higher level collector road resurfacing standard. And the agreement that we've had with the private residents at the top of Henry Road, there's a number of properties that use the private drive to access, is that we will reinstate to current or better condition for the private drive.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yeah, I'm sure the contractors will become aware very quickly, but you might let them know there's often a lineup on Henry Road for vehicles to get into the Greenway site. They would be immediately adjacent to that construction work, and so that the contractor will have to ensure that the traffic control stops them probably well ahead of the construction work.
Thanks for that comment. I will pass along.
I'm looking for a motion from somebody from areas A, B, D, E, F, or C. Director Ties.
Yes, happy to move the recommendations on page 1 of the original agenda.
And I see that seconded. Thank you very much. Any further? No, I don't see anything further, so I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. So next item is design, permitting, and engineering services for upgrades to McNeil, Chapman, and Edwards Dam. Yeah.
Thank you again, Chair McMahon. In late 2020, the board was presented with findings of dam safety audits for the McNeil Lake, Chapman Lake, and Edwards Lake dams. Subsequently, budget proposals were approved for the design phase of physical upgrades to the dams and to update some documentation to ensure these dams are in compliance with the BC Dam Safety Regulation. Presented for your consideration is a recommendation for award of contracts to WSP Canada Incorporated to provide these engineering services. The recommended contract values are $106, $183 for upgrades to McNeil Lake Dam, and $193, $817 for upgrades to Chapman Lake and Edwards Lake dams. Both contract values are within the allocated budgets. Staff are happy to discuss any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
I'll move the recommendations on page 5.
Wow, that was quick, and it's seconded. Are there any further questions? Director Hiltz.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment that, I think staff is really doing a great job. The budget proposals are on time. They're not, so the accuracy of the contract seem to be good. Terrific, actually. And there's money left in the pot, so that'll roll. So just thanks for that good, accurate work and getting the job done. So yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
very happy to see the dams upgraded. So, all right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you very much. So we are finished with major infrastructure considerations here, and we are moving on to the WASAC committee meeting minutes of June 7th. Is there anything arising from WASAC at this time? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to ask staff about the discussion about the information provided by WASAC around the notification letters, and understand there was some possible process changes that staff was doing to help change the notification letters, and if there's an update on that.
Thank you, Director Hiltz. At the meeting, there was a discussion about leak notification letters and which ones we're sending out and why and what's included in the letters. And based on we're currently reviewing our notification letters to incorporate some of the feedback received from WASAC, which was very beneficial. So we'll see which one we can incorporate in the letter or which one we can action in a different way. But we will continue to have the discussion with WASAC on that item.
Thank you very much. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, those recommendations caught my attention, but I had a question. When it says bylaw notification for leak repairs, is there any penalty under our bylaws if people decide not to comply with fixing a leak?
Thank you for the question. Currently, if a resident is not fixing a leak under the bylaw, there is an opportunity to. That's not only the case with the leak, but we have an ability to provide notice of that we're going to shut off somebody's water supply if there's confirmed wasting of water happening. And if large leaks are not fixed and multiple notifications and consultation engagement with the resident or the customer is taking place, such notices will be issued.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's a pretty good hammer. And so moving to our board expert on leak notices, Director Ties.
Yay. Love to have that title. Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that WASAC has decided to move their meeting for this month from this past Monday to the coming Monday because they wanted to have the AAP results in hand before they met. So if anybody's interested in joining, next Monday is when it's happening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, and the next item on the agenda is the PMAC meeting minutes, and I don't think there's anything to discuss there since they didn't get quorum, so the meeting was not held. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Is PMAC short members at this time? Or was it, I'm just looking and see what, 6 voting members?
Staff?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it was, yes, it's not fully. It doesn't have full membership at the moment. However, this committee will be discontinued the moment the solid waste management plan process will start later this year, and that's why no new members are being sought at the moment. In this case, there was quorum expected. However, one of the members had to deal with a personal emergency in the morning, and hence was not able to attend, and that was made the meeting not to meet quorum. But otherwise, there's quorum. So there's currently, from their perspective, no need to seek applicants for the remaining several months that this committee will stay in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Follow-up question. When we move to the updating the solid waste plan, do we start again? Do we have a whole application process for committee members?
Yes, we'll then have an application process for committee members to support the development of that solid waste management plan. And as that usually takes about 3 years, we expect that there will be some interest there from the existing members to participate as well.
Good. Thank you very much. We've run out of agenda. So is there a motion to adjourn? I see many motions to adjourn. All in favor? Okay, we are adjourned. And are there any questions from the public?
I just wanted to take a moment to say hello to Donna, who is our telephone listener with us today. It's been a while and we've missed you.
Donna Thomas. Thank you for staying with us, Donna.
I'm excited to see her there too. Hi, Donna. Missed having her.
Great
Donna,
audience.
Yeah, Donna, you got moved into the meeting if you wanted to say anything, if you wanted to unmute.
I can do that. No, I can't.
R6 to unmute.
Yeah, I believe it's *6.
Hey, here I am.
Ah,
hi.
Hi. It's been wonderful listening to you guys. It's just great.
Oh, I'm glad you got your technology working for you.
Yeah, my telephone. Thanks to Alton, who very kindly dropped off a printed agenda for me when he was down here yesterday in Gibson's, and gave me the numbers that I needed to call in, because I'm used to doing it by telephone. But I'm going to try and make it to the next one so that I can see all your faces on the movie screen out of the RD. Now that I can get going in my life without COVID rules driving me crazy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. I think we can leave this meeting now, and we'll see you all again at 2 o'clock.
Right on. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.